All right, friends. I hope all of you are back. And I'm so glad Connor Cox is with us today from DH2I. And Connor is a enterprise IT strategist, and he focuses on giving organization the highest IT service availability and protection against threats, etc. And of course, helps minimize total cost of ownership. Today, Connor is going to show you a very innovative solution around availability groups, how you can set up SQL Server AGs without using Windows failover cluster. And he's going to show it to you on both the platforms, Windows as well as Linux. Connor, thanks for taking our time to join us. Over to you.
Thanks so much. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, and we'll get things started. I appreciate the opportunity and the invite from Data Platform Geeks. Really excited to be here today, and got a lot to cover in 15 minutes here, so we'll just go ahead and jump on in. So what we're going to do today is just talk a little bit about the technology that enables these availability groups that we've been talking about here, and then we'll get right to a demo, and we will actually build out one of these environments on live systems here and do so in just a couple of minutes. So DX Enterprise is DH2I's flagship product. We have been in the SQL Server space and as a company working with SQL Server for about 10 years now. And we've really just been innovating with SQL Server availability groups within the last several years here. So availability groups, if you're not aware, contrary to what the name might suggest, are not inherently highly available. You need to implement a clustering solution to do fault detection and automate failover for your availability groups. That is what DX Enterprise for availability groups is all about. So this is, you can think of it as an alternative clustering solution to something like Windows Server failover clustering or Pacemaker on Linux. So it's much simpler to set up, as you'll see in just a moment, much easier to manage, and for creating your availability groups and so forth, it makes that process much, much simpler. One thing that's also unique here is that we can actually mix different platforms and distributions. So you can actually create a highly available availability group between Windows and Linux. So this becomes very interesting when folks are looking at doing things like migrations to Linux. And just having that level of flexibility of running, just really choosing your platform and those types of environments. Another interesting innovation here that we've added to the stack is this idea of secure tunneling. So when it comes time to create an availability group between disparate networks, so maybe you want to have a primary replica on premises and a secondary replica maybe in the cloud or on a different site. Well, the networking complexities can really start to add up, and we've taken all of that complexity out of it with our secure tunneling feature. What this means is that you don't need to set up any VPNs, you don't need to expose any open ports. We handle all the secure tunneling on your behalf for the cluster communication and the replication. The way that we make that happen is via what's called our DH2I matchmaking service. This essentially, in a nutshell, introduces the nodes to one another and then enables them to communicate directly. So that matchmaking service is not in the data path whatsoever. All it is there to essentially tell the nodes where their quorum is, where their other partners or nodes are located. So we'll be showing that as well. This is the demo environment that we're going to be working with today. We're just going to show you a 2-node cluster that has already been created between an on-premises location in Colorado, here in the States, and another node in AWS that we've already joined together. We're then going to go into the installation of the DX Enterprise product on a node that's running in Azure. It happens to be running Red Hat Linux. So it's going to be a mixed cluster in the sense that the on-premises location will be running Windows Server, And then we've got Ubuntu, so a different distribution of Linux in AWS. And then, of course, our Red Hat node in Azure. We'll then show adding an availability group to the cluster that we've created. And then we'll add some databases to that AG and show the process of failing it over. All right, so let's get started here. So I'm connected to this Lab4 machine. You can see that using our DXadmin UI, you can take a look at your cluster and do different operations on your cluster from here. You can also do all of these things via the CLI. So right now we have our AWS Ubuntu 2 node and our Lab4 node here in on premises. Again, there's no VPN between these two locations. So the tunneling has all been handled on your behalf. And so what we're going to do is connect to our Azure RHEL 1 node and go through the process of installing the DX Enterprise solution. So we're just going to install the package here. We'll run the installation. The next thing we're going to do once that's done is go ahead and activate that machine. So this is just going out to our activation server and activating that VM that's running in Azure. And then we're going to join it to a cluster. So we're saying join to an existing cluster. Are we sure we want to do that? Yes, we are. Do we want to join via that matchmaking service that I described earlier? And we'll say, yes, we do. And we're accepting that that is the address for the matchmaking service. And then it asks for a passkey. Well, in order to enter that, we need to first generate it on our existing cluster. So we'll go ahead and go down to cluster membership and manage a one-time private key. So this is a single-use key that we'll generate, which will enable us to add our next node. So we'll go ahead and set our one-time private key. We'll then copy that to the clipboard here and paste that in here where it says enter passkey and hit enter. So it's going out, it's checking with the matchmaking service and saying, where are where are the rest of the nodes in my cluster? And it's joining them together. So you're seeing now, okay, no VPN once again, no open ports, no direct links whatsoever. We now have 3 nodes across AWS, Azure, and on-premises, all participating in the same cluster. So pretty cool stuff. We'll then next create what's called a virtual host or vhost. This is the logical entity under which we are going to associate our availability group. And we're just going to assign it the local loopback address because we don't have an IP address that will be bindable on all of these separate networks. And then we're just selecting the nodes that we want to participate in the availability group. We're saying Lab4 is primary, and then the failover ordering on down from our primary replica. So we'll go ahead and hit OK. So these are the nodes that are going to participate in this availability group. And then let's just go in and go ahead and create the availability group. So we need to give it a name. Call it AG38 tunnel. This will create the tunnels on our behalf for the availability group. And then we just need to authenticate to the SQL Server instance on each one of these nodes that's going to participate in the availability group. So we'll go ahead and do that. Okay, we're using an existing certificate. That's fine. Same thing here. Authenticate on our last node. Okay, and then we're going to hit OK. This is going to tell us, hey, we're about to create this availability group. Sure you want to do it? Yes. Okay, and it automatically goes out and handles a lot of the things that can be very cumbersome, especially on Linux, for creating an availability group, things like certificates, the endpoints, things like that. And we'll just give that a few seconds here, and we'll start to see our availability group become connected and come online. So that's just a function of SQL Server, and that's now done. So we have an availability group across these nodes. And the next thing that we can then do is manage the databases associated with this availability group. So we're going to say, let's just put DB02 over there, hit submit. Okay, and so now we are saying add this database to the availability group, and that's going to also go out and synchronize. So that's going to take some amount of time that really is outside of our control as the availability group synchronizes. We've just sent that command to SQL Server. And then once that's done, we will have a highly available availability group. So if anything happens with the SQL Server service, this will automatically fail over onto the next available secondary replica in the list. Okay, so don't really have the time to sit and wait for these to synchronize. So, but you can imagine once that's done, we can then initiate a manual failover. Things will automatically fail over, all in a cluster that we just set up in just a couple of minutes. So this tool can do a whole lot more, just kind of scratching the surface here, just so you folks here get a sense for what it's capable of. And so what I want to do is just quickly jump back to slides here. If this is something that's of interest to you and you want to try it out, you certainly have an opportunity to go to dh2i.com/trial. And from there, we can get you access to software. We also have AWS AMIs available. So if you just search for DH2I in the AWS Marketplace, we also have a trial that is available there as well. So appreciate everybody sponsoring these events. And thank you all so much for your attendance. Let's see if we've got some questions here. We've got a little bit of time, a few more seconds. Okay, open questions.
So yeah, Connor, there seems to be one question there, I guess, from Karthik.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure if this was directed at me or at Amit.
Oh, it is related to always on availability groups. So the question is, can you please provide some insights on relation between recommended number of databases in AG versus CPU threads that can prevent secondary latencies, high redo queue sizes, and huge database log files? Okay, very subjective there, Karthik, the question, but yes, the more databases you add to your availability groups, obviously you are asking for more CPU resources there, specifically depending on whether you're doing synchronous replication or you're doing asynchronous synchronization between the primary and the secondary replicas. So it's like both the servers, you're asking more work to do, which will of course mean more threads and more CPU consumption. I'm just kind of answering it from a very holistic approach. But then more metrics can be available when we are monitoring it using DMVs, etc. So that's probably what I think.
Okay.
Another question is there. Connor, would you like to take that one up?
Sure, absolutely. So prerequisites, they're pretty straightforward. This tool relies on .NET framework or .NET Core. So those are certainly prerequisites that you would need to meet. But outside of that, it's SQL Server 2017 or newer, because we rely on cluster type of external, which became available in 2017.
Okay, Mani has some questions on licensing. Connor, for you.
Sure. So limitations and licensing. So how this is licensed is it's licensed on a subscription basis, and it's licensed on a per replica basis. So all of the primary and secondary replicas that are participating in the cluster are licensed annually.
Perfect. Okay, so similar question by Nawed also. So guys, Money and Nawed, and the good thing is Connor's details are shared in the chat window. You can talk to him directly. Why not? Arti is Satya, I think details are up in the chat window for Connor. Connor, can you put up the slide with your email ID, etc. there? So maybe attendees, whoever is interested, I think your demo was very appealing to many folks out here.
Absolutely. Just go ahead and share that now. Yeah, so get in touch. Obviously each configuration is a little bit different, but we recognize that folks are typically spending big money on Enterprise Edition of SQL Server for their availability groups. So this is an insignificant add-on. We've intentionally kept the licensing aggressive, just so that folks can take advantage of it.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Connor, and sincere thanks and gratitude to DH2I, who are knowledge partners for this event. And as I have always been saying, knowledge partners have helped make this event free for all of you. So get in touch with them. There is a link in the chat window. Using that link, you can basically ask knowledge partners to talk to you. So just click on the link, put down your name and email ID, and they will get in touch with you. And you can even choose which knowledge partner you would like to hear from. So that's the kind of support we seek out. So thanks DH2I, thanks Connor for taking out time. Wonderful association here.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the opportunity.